Sabi girl no they too like talk. Animals they in human form. Body man nobody like walk, but you must hustle if you want job. You no finish they won't fight us. If them they run them no fit catch up. I know they form say I too righteous. No con they form say you too like us. Me no get the time for the hate and the bad energy. Got my mind on my money. Make you dance like broccoli. Steady green like broccoli. Steady on my grind, oh yeah, what they want telling me. Could deny my fantasy. They want to check if my tap ain't no wrong. But it they rush well, it be much. Now gotta make my tap in the rush. The kind money we touch, yeah. It they rush well, it be much. No be hype, everybody they crush. There's no darling with us.
It's exactly 1600 Central African Time. Good afternoon, Africa, and welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa, the African perspective. This is where Africa's opportunities meet insights, analysis, and impact. But first, let's check out what's happening in the world of news.
SABC News, the African perspective.
Thank you, Innocent. The top stories at this hour: crime investigator comments on Robert Mugabe's son's case, and new sanctions on 4 leaders of Sudan's RSF. Good afternoon. I am Chandruko Ligege. Specialist crime investigator Mike Bolhuis has rejected social media claims that the criminal case against Robert Mugabe's son, Belamai Mugabe, and his co-accused Tobias Matonhodze might be thrown out of the court for lack of evidence. This is due to missing firearm allegedly used in the shooting incident. Mugabe and Matonhodze were arrested following the shooting of an employee of the Mugabe Johannesburg property last week. Bolhuis gives his opinion on the matter.
There is physical evidence of a shot, there is witnesses, and this is a gun wound and he's critically in hospital. These are all facts and information that will be presented to the court. There is no other way this person is in the situation that he finds himself other than being shot by a gun. But the fact remains that those who don't come forward with a gun is in bigger trouble. If victim lies and does not give his full cooperation, he also is in trouble. This case cannot fall away. Nobody can withdraw this case, and this case has to be prosecuted by the state.
The city of Cape Town in South Africa has issued an early drought caution, saying the metro's water supply is currently sitting at 20% less than this time last year. The city says it will assess the situation further during the highest rainfall months from June to August before considering water restrictions. The city's MACO member for water and sanitation, Dr. Zahid Badudrian, has called for behavioral change in water use by the city's residents. He addressed the media in Cape Town.
So at the moment, our dam levels are at about 57%. We have seen week on week almost a 2% decrease in the volume of water in our dams. We know that about 70% of water that is being used in our city at this moment takes place in our homes, with the fear, unfortunately, that our dam levels may continue to decline on the background of us already estimating that the rains may come later in the year, further worsening the risk of potential restrictions in about November, if not earlier.
Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral and Petroleum Resources in South Africa, Mekateko Mhlaule, says it is impossible to legalize those who are mining illegally, as the majority of them are undocumented foreigners. Mhlaule's remarks follow feedback by the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure on interventions undertaken to fight illegal mining in affected provinces. Mhlaule says for now it is still a challenge to formalize illegal miners known as Zamazamas.
If you were to take Stilfontein as an example, you arrested 2,092 people and only 21 were South Africans. So we try very hard to formalize South African people who are mining illegally and who would want to mine formally and legally. So if we were to take an approach to legalize everybody who is a Zamazama, it means in South Africa we would have 1,000 and something people who were legalizing without documentation as South Africans.
The UN Security Council has announced new sanctions on 4 leaders of Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces over atrocities committed in the western city of El Fasher. The capture of the city in October was one of the most brutal chapters of the civil war. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Asher has more details.
The UN said Abdulrahim Dagalo had overseen operations on the day the RSF took over El Fasher, citing atrocities carried out by his forces, including mass killings and ethnically targeted executions. It also sanctioned a commander known as Abu Lulu, who earned the nickname Butcher of El Fasher because of graphic videos he posted that showed him smiling while killing unarmed civilians. This is now the 4th time General Dagalo has been sanctioned, following earlier designations by the US, the UK, and the European Union. The other 3 commanders have also already been sanctioned by the US and Britain.
And finally, in the longest ever State of the Union address to Congress, U.S. President Donald Trump said his administration had delivered what he called a turnaround for the ages in its first year and ushered in a golden age. He singled out the Somali community in Minnesota for particularly disparaging comments. The BBC's Sarah Smith has more.
President Trump used this speech to tell Americans that in the 13 months since he returned to office, he has transformed the U.S. from a nation in crisis to the hottest country on earth. As he claimed that the economy is roaring and the border is now secure, he deliberately steered away from recent controversies such as the killing of American citizens protesting against immigration raids and the Epstein files. Instead, he focused on the more popular policy of removing illegal immigrants who are also convicted criminals. And he said, thanks to him, America is winning again. Donald Trump's current low approval rating suggests voters have not got that message.
A recap on the top story at this hour. Specialist crime investigator Mike Bolhais has rejected social media claims that the criminal case against Robert Mugabe's son, Bellarmine Mugabe, and his co-accused, Tobias Matonoze Mugabe, might be thrown out of the court for lack of evidence. That is all from me. For any stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Nigeria Football Federation will continue to negotiate with Eric Chelle despite his exorbitant financial demands. And the Spa Grand Prix celebrates its 18th anniversary this year with increased prize money. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
All right, it's exactly 16:07 Central African Time, Wednesday, the 25th of February 2026. Good afternoon, Africa. My name is Innocent Simosa, in for Tami Ngobeni, and welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Well, coming up this hour, South Africa's Finance Minister delivers his 2026 budget speech. And of course, we're hearing that the government of Malawi reject bids for treasury bills, a move the finance minister in that country sees as, curbing excessive domestic borrowing. Well, we are broadcasting live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're on DSTV channel Audio Bouquet on channel 802, on OpenView on channel 628, and you can stream us live on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as the SABC Plus app available on the Google and Apple Play Store. Join the conversation by finding us on X at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa, on Instagram at Channel Africa 1. You can also subscribe to our YouTube at Channel Africa 1. This is Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Right, let's look at this story now. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has described infrastructure investment as the cornerstone of the country's economic growth in his 2026 budget speech. He announced that public sector infrastructure spending will reach about $68 billion over the next 3 years, with government pursuing accelerated reforms aimed at attracting private investment into the sector. Here's the Minister Godongwana delivering his 2026 budget speech.
Local government is the sphere where communities experience the state most directly. Yet, many municipalities are in financial and operational distress and therefore unable to deliver services as they should. Audit outcomes highlight this unacceptable reality. 63% of municipalities are in financial distress, and the proportion of clean audits remains unacceptably low. A central challenge with municipalities is that they not only differ in capacity, but also in their revenue-raising potential. This demands a more targeted approach to respond to the diverse pressures facing municipalities. The National Treasury is vital in support for development of long-term financial plans. These plans will improve project identification, sustainable planning, cash flows, and inform financial decisions. This will negate the challenge of unfunded mandates and limited capacity to maintain infrastructure and sustain services. Further structural reforms are underway, including a comprehensive review of the local government fiscal framework, together with the comprehensive review of the local government work paper. A second area I want to deal with on municipalities is the reform of the infrastructure grant system, municipal infrastructure grant system. Let me just again capture this thing by using an example. In 2024, some municipalities had disaster and we provided them with money. In 2025, the same municipalities, there was disaster in the same municipalities. When we gave them the money in 2025, they had not used the 2024 money. Now, the point is, it's easy to say the money returns back to Treasury, but the effect of it is that the communities that have lost a bridge or something and still have that problem. So in this regard, the grant system will be reformed to make sure that we are going to provide the money to those institutions, even the district municipality or other accredited institutions, which will help those municipalities to provide the service. That's how this grant is going to be working. Now, coming to the infrastructure issues, how is this trillion broken down and other public entities? 217.8 billion rand by provinces and 205.7 billion by municipalities. Largely by sector, transport and logistics make up the largest share. SANRAL will focus on strengthening long-term network resilience. This includes the annual maintenance of approximately 27,000 kilometers and the resurfacing of 2,000 kilometers of road. PRASA, as I've indicated, continues to implement its corridor recovery program and modernize core infrastructure to rebuild reliable, affordable rail service for commuters. This will enable the increase in annual passenger trips from 77 million trips in 24-25 to between 250 and 450 million trips over the medium term. In energy, investment will focus on improving the security of supply and mobilize private sector investment. In the medium-term budget policy, we announced that National, together with the World Bank, are making significant progress with the credit guarantee vehicle. The credit guarantee vehicle, which will support massive investment in transmission infrastructure, will be incorporated as a company in the coming months. Next, we will expand. We expect development partners to confirm their capital participation. Thereafter, the credit guarantee vehicle will apply for a license from the Prudential Authority. We are targeting the credit guarantee vehicle to be operational later this year. In water, investment are directed towards high-impact bulk water augmentation schemes, refurbishing of aging infrastructure, and the completion of strategic projects that support economic nodes and agriculture and household supply. Honourable members, we continue to implement reforms to unlock greater private sector participation, enhance spending efficiency, and shorten delivery timelines.
All right, that was South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. For more on this, we are joined on the line by Dr. Clement Moyo, economist at Ndiso Industrialization Consulting. Dr. Moyo, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Channel Africa.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the listeners.
Indeed. Now, government plans the 1.07 trillion in infrastructure, Dr. Moyo, and this is an investment in infrastructure over the medium term, focusing on the likes of energy, transport, and water. In your view, Doc, how crucial is this for attracting private investment and driving economic growth?
Yeah, this is massive for the economy. I think investments in basic services like your energy, transport and water are crucial for attracting investments, because they impact on the cost of production. When you look at it, if cost of production and if water, we don't have access to enough water, transport systems are not great, it enhances or it increases the cost of production. At the end of the day, it makes our products a bit more expensive to produce, and if we are to export and try and compete with other countries, it makes our products less less competitive out there in the export markets. So so it's quite crucial for investors to come in, and no investor would want to invest in an area where basic services are not available, because in that sense they have to spend more money to try and get those services up and running. So it increases the actual amounts that they need to invest. So I think this just over R1 trillion rand investment by the country, I think will go a long way in attracting investors by fixing some of the challenges we have in that space.
Dr. Moyo, the big talking point last year and this year, it has been that of service delivery. You just mentioned the issues of water, that if an investor comes in the country, they'll have to spend more to put services into order. But in your view, will the 1.07 trillion allocated be sufficient to meaningfully improve service delivery, so to speak?
Definitely. I think when you look at the amount is quite substantial, and I think it should have an impact. But however, we've seen these allocations even before. Some of these allocations for on infrastructure, but some of those have not really translated to improvements in service delivery. So I think from an amount perspective, look at the amount spent. Definitely, it's an amount that should be able to improve service delivery. But the importance now is how efficient is this investment? How is this money going to be spent? Is it going to be spent in the areas where it will have this large impact? So I think, I think government is moving towards the point where they're trying to enhance governance and they're trying to be a bit more hands-on in the provision of service delivery and how they spend this money. So, I think if they improve such facilities, ensure that they're able to manage or monitor how some of these funds are spent, such that they're spent in areas where they're supposed to be spent, then this service delivery will definitely improve. So it's not only about just pumping the money, but there has to be other measures to monitor how this money gets spent.
Yeah, indeed. And also the issue of performance-based grants will, target several municipalities to boost water and sanitation and electricity services. Dr. Moyo, can this approach be sustainable for municipalities with a history of chronic underperformance? And I'm talking here because of issues around the backlog in municipalities and aging systems and maintaining, infrastructure. Do you believe that this approach will be sustainable for municipalities?
Yeah, I think we've seen some of the challenges from that municipalities are facing. I think, and some of them it's due to negligence to some degree. Expenditures in maintenance not being up to where they're supposed to be, and some of the infrastructure being allowed to sort of get damaged to some degree. So I think having this performance-based grants that the minister has announced, I think this is a step in the right direction. I think in order to encourage municipalities, especially the metros, mostly targeting the metros, to encourage them to fix some of the water issues. Because if you look at the metros, are quite, they're very important for the economy. If you look at Johannesburg, where we've had issues around water and Midrand just recently, major issues in the water space. So I think the minister is trying to incentivize some of the metros so that they can ensure that they spend money fixing infrastructure. If you look at issues around water losses, those are massive water losses that we're seeing. I think almost, in some metros, even 50% of the water gets lost and they don't bill for it. So it's called non-revenue water. So where, they pump this water, but about 50% gets lost and they can't even bill anyone because it's leaking. So that's an incentive that is required. There's an incentive required to ensure that, they sort out those issues. I think this approach for this performance-based grants is going to go a long way in assisting or incentivizing municipalities to actually, try and sort out some of those infrastructure issues, aging infrastructure, and sort of backlogs that they are facing.
Dr. Moyo, another long-standing issue has been that of unemployment. Any low-hanging fruits for job creation that the minister maybe touched on that you think it's key?
I think the key areas for job creation around infrastructure and assistance to small businesses, right? I think small businesses are regarded as major job creators in the economy. So, I think there is some mention in terms of, improving how small businesses work in terms of reducing the issue around the VAT registration, But however, it's quite imperative that more gets done from an infrastructure perspective. I think which is what is being done, but also, to assist small businesses to be able to, write business plans, for them to, to have infrastructure that they can use. Maybe industrial parks, for example, are quite imperative for SMMEs to be part of in incubation hubs where they can learn, given, how small businesses struggle to survive, I think, post 5 years in the country. I think there's an effort that needs to be made in investing in such infrastructure like industrial parks and incubation hubs for SMMEs to create these jobs. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the SMMEs are the real engines for job creation, because they do have the room to grow over time. So I think there's more that needs to be done from an SMME perspective and funding in that of those.
Dr. Clement Moyo, economist at Ndiso Industrialization Consulting. Thank you so much for making the time.
Okay, no, thank you very much for having me.
Well, there you have it. That conversation brings us to exactly 1621. It does seem as though this was relatively welcomed budget from many economists.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
From Parliament, now we go to Malawi. Since the beginning of the year, the government of Malawi has been rejecting bids for treasury bills, T-bills, a move fiscal and monetary authorities say it aims to curbing excessive domestic borrowing and reinforcing fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability efforts. Now, Chief Economist at the Dawn Consultancy Group, DCG, Chifipa Mango, Mango explains that by turning down high yields T-bill bits, the government is signaling its unwillingness to borrow at sustainably high interest rates. To unpack this further, Chief Economist at the Dawn Consultancy Group, DCG, Chifepa Mango, joins us on the line. Mango, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate you making the time. Perhaps let me begin by asking you, the government of Malawi has been rejecting bids for treasury bills since the start of the year. Is this a sign that Malawi is reaching its domestic borrowing limits?
Well, it is a sign that the country is like reach a limit, but also it's more about restructuring in terms of how the fiscal has actually been operated over the years. But I think it's also about trying to take a response in terms of how best the economy can move forward from the fiscal sustainability, but also in terms of debt management. So I think it's a combination of factors at play here, which plays an element of motivation to see how best the government can move in terms of the best process towards fiscal restructuring.
And could a continued rejection of bids create liquidity pressures within government operations?
Well, currently what the government has done is
Chief, are you still with us? All right, I'm going to take Chief back to the producer and re-establish. All right, Chief, are you still with us?
I'm here. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah,
but I think what I was saying is that
the
government has actually created austerity measures which are more or less being applied in terms of reducing expenditure. So that is also creating a room whereby, in the context of borrowing, that is now also being reduced. So that's why the element of rejection of treasury bills come in line with the government policy towards fiscal consolidation.
Aren't there concerns that this approach could discourage participation in future government scrutinies and moving forward?
I don't think so. I think this requires a bit of policy mix, which the government will actually be looking at in terms of implementation. So, for example, when you look, the element why you go and borrow is because you want to look at how best you can address issues from the fiscal element. So what the government is looking at in case policy mix is to look at the diversification of the Malawian economy in terms of transaction, mining that has actually been identified, processing has been identified, but also it's looking at the trade position in terms of moving more towards export, where government can more for the more protections. I think that's
all right.
That's about which will happen.
Chifip, I think the line is not kind with us. Let me take you back to the producer to re-establish that line. You're listening to Africa in Business on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le Diamant Rouge aka Binal Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Africa in Business.
All right, if you just joined us, we are discussing the economy of Malawi, and I'm joined on the line by Chifepa Mango. He's the chief economist at the Dawn Consultancy Group. Mango, thank you so much for staying with us. And I'm keen to know if the government now continues to reject domestic borrowing at high interest rates. Where will they source funding? Which other means can be used to raise funding? And are we likely to see any concessional funding from banks?
Well, what the government has actually done in Malawi is to improve its revenue collection, but also to increase taxes. So that is already been under implementation in terms of increasing its revenue base. But also in terms of what I've shared earlier on with regard to expenditure, they are also looking at reducing unnecessary expenditure. So on the administrative side of things, I mean, if you look at the budget environment in Malawi, almost 80% has been spent towards administrative costs. So that is actually now being reduced, whereby now the government is moving towards a target of at least reaching 50% in terms of administrative costs being a commission of government expenditure. So I think in a way, there is an element of fiscal consideration from the government perspective.
Yeah, if it's fiscal consolidation push, I would imagine that will indeed attract investors. Could concessional financing, as I've indicated, be a realistic alternative, Mango, at this stage, given the fact that the Malawian government is indeed shying away from costly debt obligations?
Well, I think that option is on the table, especially when you're looking at the key developmental projects. It's always a case in Malawi where development partners come into play in terms of supporting the government. We've looked at so many other institutions that have actually been on the table in terms of having discussions in terms of where they can support the current Malawi government. So I think it's an option on the table.
It's an option on the table. Thank you so much for indeed making the time. Chief Economist at the Dawn Consultancy Group, DCG, Chefepa Mango.
Thank you.
All right, it brings us to exactly 16:30 Central African time. Let's check out what's happening in the market indicators with Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Ina. Good afternoon. In your business indicators, the SAWA, $1 is trading at 15 Rand 99 in South Africa. In Botswana is trading at 13 Pula 08. In Namibia, it is trading at 15 Namibian dollars 99. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 18 kwacha 85 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 12. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 155 birr. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 568. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 565. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 347. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pounds 76. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 868. In Algeria, it is trading at 129 dinar 10. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 07. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,237 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $5,189 and platinum at $2,338 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $71.43 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
All right. Thank you so much, Nosipho. Let's look at the world of sport with Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Innocent. We begin with football news in the business of sport. Super Eagles coach Eric Chell has reportedly submitted a 19-point list of conditions to the Nigerian Football Federation, the NFF, as part of negotiations for a contract extension. Chell, who signed a 2-year contract with the NFF in January 2025 with an optional additional year in the NFF's favor, was linked with a move to League One side Marseille. According to sports journalist Sheena Oludare, the Franco-Malian coach formally presented the proposed terms to the NFF following what he described as an in-depth investigation and fact-checking of the document. The proposal listed a monthly salary of $130,000 covering the coach, his technical staff and personal assistant, alongside a request for monthly meetings involving all national team coaches. It also includes the provision of a private SUV with chauffeur and security, a house in a secure environment with 24-hour electricity, and furnished office equipment with a projector for technical analysis and internet. And Namibia Executive Director and Accounting Officer for Sport, Gerald Fries, says they are awaiting a technical review from the Confederation of African Football, CAF, before finalizing preparations for the construction of the Independence Stadium. Namibia currently has no stadium approved by either CAF or the International Federation of Football, FIFA. As a result, national teams have been barred from hosting international fixtures and are forced to play their home match abroad. Although the ministry received an initial allocation of $25 million at the start of the current financial year, the capital budget was reduced to $12 million during the midterm budget review in October 2025, leaving a revised allocation to $13 million. It says of the revised allocation is $2 million has been spent to date on consultancy fees for the upgrading of the Independence Stadium. The remaining funds will be expended between January and March 2026. And Nedbank have moved to address the widespread social media rhetoric that they are not happy about the absence of Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns in the Kiona quarterfinals. Chiefs, Pirates and Sundowns all suffered early exits from this season's Nedbank Cup, which fans hysterical over a perceived loss of value for the sponsors. However, Executive Head of Marketing Strategy, Tebogo Motsepe, has clarified what the absence of the traditional big guns means for their brand.
We saw the narrative on social media, people saying, Nedbank is not happy with this outcome. I think let me start first by explaining why it is that we are involved in the Nedbank Cup. Outside of driving key commercial objectives, and also from a brand perspective, we really believe in South African football. And what we're doing is we're investing in our game by putting together what is without a doubt one of the best cup competitions, not in South Africa, but around the world. It really pits PSL teams against National First Division, against teams from the SAFA League. And you are always going to have that situation whereby it's a David versus Goliath.
The last 4 editions have seen Chiefs, Pirates twice and Sundowns leave the Nedbank Cup, which meant the CSR initiative of installing a multi-purpose sports court at an underprivileged school was all done in Gauteng. Motsepe is excited that this initiative could now reach other parts of the country.
We saw the narrative on social media, people saying, Nedbank is not happy with this outcome. I think let me start first by explaining why it is that we are involved in the Nedbank Cup. Outside of driving key commercial objectives, and also from a brand perspective, we really believe in South African football. And what we're doing is we're investing in our game by putting together what is without a doubt one of the best cup competitions, not in South Africa, but around the world. It really pits PSL teams against National First Division, against teams from the SAFA League, and you are always going to have that situation whereby it's a David versus Goliath.
The Spa Grand Prix celebrates its 18th anniversary this year, and this iconic competition just keeps on getting better. The Spa Grand Prix series runs over 5 Spa Women's 10-kilometer challenge races in Cape Town, Durban, Tshwane, Gqeberha and Johannesburg, and is designed for top female road runners. The total prize money has been increased to a whopping $123,000. The overall winner of the Spa Grand Prix will take home $13,000. The second place runner $6,000 and the third place runner will receive $5,000. Prize money for the age categories has also been increased, with the overall winner receiving $687 and the runner-up $5,000. In addition, there are incentives for the top 5 South African runners, with the top South African receiving $7,000 and the second $4,000. The 5th place South African will take home $1,000. This is in addition to the money they win in the main competition. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
All right, a very big thank you to the news desk. Let's get to the story now. Tourism leaders say stronger collaboration, improved infrastructure, and better connectivity are essential to unlocking Africa's tourism potential. These issues are in focus at Meetings Africa 2026, wraps up today in Johannesburg, South Africa, where industry stakeholders have gathered to discuss the future of travel on the continent. Channel Africa's reporter Leboha Mabange has more.
After days of deal-making, exhibitions and networking, the final discussions at Meetings Africa are focusing on one big question: how Africa can work together to grow its tourism market. Industry leaders say the continent has huge potential, but unlocking it will require cooperation between countries, better transport links, and policies that make travel easier. Managing Director of MSC Cruises South Africa, Ross Falk, highlighted the opportunity for Africa to grow its cruise tourism sector.
34 million people are transported on cruise vessels around the world annually, but 60% of that's out of America. And they've been the major proponent of cruise industries for a very, very long time. If you succeed in America, you succeed in cruising. And I think it's now time to look at what they've done effectively well and bring that to an African connectivity. And I think that we are very much in a sunrise kind of environment within Africa, and South Africa in particular, but we have a long way to go in relation to what we need to go and look at doing. And the connectivity is one of those fundamental issues that we have to look at.
Falk says collaboration between African countries will be key if the continent wants to tap into the global cruise market.
So we've got to provide a holistic solution to visas, free transport, travel, integrated security policies, because you're touching multiple countries. I think a continent of 1.1 billion people, if 18 million of Americans travel on cruises, what can we do with 30% more population in Africa if we have the right platform and the right collaboration to grow the industry within Africa, but South Africa in particular?
The conversation also turned to the broader challenge of making travel across Africa easier and more accessible. Chifiwa Chibengwa, CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, says improving infrastructure is essential if the continent wants to grow intra-African travel.
Within the African context, there's a lot of talk about we need to collaborate. There's a lot of talk about things that we need to do to grow the economy, whether it's a tourism economy or economy in general. There's a lot of discussions that we have around that. If we really want to drive the growth of intra-Africa travel, we need to invest in infrastructure. That is the problem. It can't be that you can't dock ships across many parts here in South Africa or across many other areas of the African continent. We need to invest in that infrastructure if we want to attract the cruising industry, and also if we want our own people to get into cruising.
Chivengwa says while collaboration is often discussed, real progress will depend on governments and the private sector working together.
Collaboration within the African context, it's usually failed, not by private sector, it failed by the other party, which is the public sector. Because we talk about things that we want to do, we've got these grand ideas that never see the light of the day. So if we really want to build up, there are many things that we need to do from aviation point of view, connecting many different African countries, to building railway networks, to making sure our ports are ready for passengers and goods, and many other things.
As Meetings Africa comes to an end, industry players say the conversations must now translate into action if the continent is to fully unlock the potential of its tourism sector. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right, thank you so much, Lebo. Let's look at this story now. Nigeria's policy committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has cut the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points to 26.5%, citing a sustained disinflation and improved macroeconomic stability. Speaking at the February committee meeting, the first for the year, Governor of the Apex Bank, Oleyemi Kadoso, notes that a moderate easing in rates is in line with the recent slowdown in inflation. For more on this, let's talk now to Adene Fetayo, economist and CEO of Megastar Media Communications. Fetayo, thank you so much for making the time and good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Innes. It is my pleasure to join from here.
Indeed, does this 50 basis point cut signal confidence in your view that inflation is firmly under control?
Well, let me start by saying that the 50 basis point call by Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria suggests growing confidence that inflationary pressure are easing, going down gradually, but not necessarily that inflation is fully under control. And by reducing the rate to 26.5%, the CBN is signaling that the recent data shows sustained disinflation and improved macroeconomic stability, whereby creating room for caution policy easing so that gradually it also means that the banks appear confident about the direction of price trends because, of course, the CBN set the pace.
Yeah, and Governor Kadoso notes that a moderate easing in rates is in line with the recent slowdown in inflation, as you rightly alluded to. Is the Nigerian economy strong enough to absorb further rates cuts this year?
Yes, because if you look at it, it's also CBN signal caution optimism. But whether the economy can absorb for that cut will depend on how durable the current disinflation trend proved to be. And while improved macroeconomic stability and easing price pressure provide some room for gradual easing, then also risks such as exchange rate volatility, fiscal pressure, and global financial conditions remain. So although the Central Bank of Nigeria under the current Governor Kadoso is therefore likely to proceed carefully, ensuring that inflation expectations remain anchored before committing to additional rate reduction. They need to see the outcome. Is it paying off? Is it giving Nigerian more purchasing power, etc., etc.?
And Fetayo, do you see this decision impacting borrowing costs for businesses and households in Nigeria?
Yes, of course. It's just like, let me put it in a layman or market woman. When prices goes down, there tends to be that we want to buy more. And of course, the cut in the monetary policy to 26% is expected to reduce the cost of borrowing for both businesses and household over time, because the lower policy rate generally leads commercial bank and lender to lower their lending rate as well, because they are there to make money or to make business or to make profit. Making loan cheaper for firm to finance investment, for household to borrow, maybe purchases like mortgage, vehicle, or personal credit. This can stimulate greater credit access and investment and spending. And if bank pass on the rate reduction to customer, because sometimes they get it as 26%, some will still remain adamant they want to charge 29, 30%, etc., etc. So, however, many lenders may adjust lending rates only gradually so that the full impact on actual borrowing costs may take time to materialize.
Fetayo, what do you say then to the people who would say, hang on, this feels like a premature easing and could risk reversing the gains made in stabilizing inflation? I know that, Governor Kadoso used, his own methods to see how the inflation is slowing down. But what do you say to those who feel like this is a premature, easing and could risk the reversing the gains made in stabilizing inflation?
Yes, some school of thought might say that is a premature easing, which could risk reversing inflation gain if underlying price pressure, such as exchange rate volatility and food supply shock, liquidity surge resurface. But mind you, in the last 3, 4, 5 months, we've seen the exchange rate, Naira, coming strong and stabilized. However, if this inflation is sustained and supported by improved macroeconomic stability, and a cautious and moderate rate cut may also help support growth without derailing price stability. The key risk lies in whether inflation expectations remain firmly anchored, whether is under control. And don't let us forget as well, for any policy, there's a time of gestation period. Let's see the outcome and see that even as some people feeling that is a premature easing, it might reverse the gain. Let's see where it leads us. And he's there, and I can give them kudos. Let me give them 6/10 for what the CBN is doing at the moment.
Looking at exogenous and endogenous factors, but also zoning into the microeconomic stability, where is it now? Since you're saying that if the macroeconomic stance is stable, that could improve, not risking the risk that have been done so far to stabilize inflation. Where is the macroeconomic stability in the country so far? Are you seeing confidence?
Yes, I'm seeing confidence because if you look at it in the last decades, Nigerian economy has been dollarized. When I mean dollarized, we depend on dollar. Whatever affects dollar affects both microeconomy and whatever it is. But now since that has been able, floating of Naira has been able to stabilize. So the microeconomy, and of course, don't forget about local content. And there are several other policies that makes microeconomy to thrive. To get their balance so that they can flow, so that they can compete, very well. And I'm sure that now microeconomy, they are doing well. They are coming out of the water, because in the last administration is almost all the economy were buried. But now we are getting our breath, and microeconomy, they are getting their breath coming out of water with different incentives and policies initiated by the government, and so I think macroeconomy, they are coming up and they are finding their foot on the ground so that they can stand and compete favorably.
Economist and CEO of Megastar Media Communications, Adeni Efetayo, thank you so much for indeed making the time.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, there you have it. He believes that this is a step in the right direction when you talk about investor confidence and capital flows in Nigeria. All right,
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
That conversation brings us to exactly 16:51 Central African time, and is that time of the afternoon where I welcome Joël with Vue d'Afrique. Good afternoon to you.
Bonjour.
What can we expect on the show?
Bonjour à toi Innocent, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Alors aujourd'hui sur Vue d'Afrique, il sera question notamment de la tension qui est montée d'un cran entre la Guinée et la Sierra Leone après l'interpellation de 16 militaires sierra-léonais par les forces armées guinéennes. Nous parlerons aussi de la RDC, la FCM 23 qui accuse Kinshasa de fouler au pied le cessez-le-feu après l'assassinat de son porte-parole. Nous nous entretiendrons avec un représentant de la Lucha. Et en deuxième partie, évidemment, ce sera le sport avec Jolino Songou. Il sera notamment question du tournoi de l'Unifac. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connecté. Merci Innocent.
Merci. She's up next with Vue d'Afrique. We'll definitely be listening. Let's take a quick commercial breather.
Channel Africa is moving with the times, and so is our WhatsApp line. We've changed our WhatsApp number, making it even easier for you to stay connected. Send us your voice notes, comments, shout-outs, and song requests to our new WhatsApp number, +27 83 288 6684. That's +27 83 288 6684. Save it, share it, and stay in the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
All right. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana earlier tabled his 2026-2027 budget against a more favorable backdrop, with public finances reaching a turning point, stabilizing for the first time in 17 years. Addressing Parliament, Minister Godongwana says the National Treasury is making headway in narrowing the budget deficit to 4.5% of GDP for 2025-2026. For reaction on the 2026 South Africa's budget speech, we're now joined on the line by Andre Brink, investment analyst at ABSA. Andre, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good afternoon.
Indeed, were there any significant changes to the consolidated budget balance? I mean, investors have been closely watching to see whether South Africa is pushing towards fiscal consolidation.
Yeah, it's been very highly anticipated. From a revenue perspective, we did see revenues overshooting, which was largely in line with what markets had expected. Most of that coming from tax revenue, so coming in about 20 billion rands higher than what was projected in the 2025 national budget. And a lot of that really coming from higher VAT collections, as well as corporate income tax and dividend withholding tax, partially being supported by the fact that we've had such high commodity prices, particularly gold and platinum, for the past year or so, which has really helped to boost the fiscus from that perspective. And then I think one key one that investors definitely were watching is whether or not our government would have gone through with the planned 20 billion rand tax hikes that was penciled in for the upcoming fiscal year. But because of the stronger revenue performance, we have seen National Treasury scrapping those planned tax hikes. So in light of that, we are also seeing then just revenue projections for the upcoming 2 fiscal years also being revised slightly lower. If we look at some of the other sort of changes that we saw there, some increases to excise duties for the likes of tobacco and alcoholic beverages, as well as a bit of a higher fuel levy as well, all of these in line with inflation. But what is counteracting that a bit on the positive side is the fact that personal income tax brackets will also be revised in line with inflation. And then on the expenditure front, also saw that coming in slightly higher for the 2025-26 fiscal year, also in line with what we had expected. But going forward, seeing a bit of progress and expenditure definitely coming lower in the upcoming 2 fiscal years. So taking all of that together, we did see the consolidated budget balance coming in at negative 4.5% of GDP, slightly lower than what was expected in the 2025 medium-term budget policy statement. And overall, we are expecting to see that improve further over the next couple of years. So the deficit expected to narrow to about 3.1% in the 2027-28 fiscal year.
Do you perhaps get a sense that, or should I say, is the National Treasury still prioritizing debt commitment in your view?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's still a key priority for them. I mean, we've seen it in their sort of narrative in the past couple of budget addresses. What is key is the fact that we have seen debt servicing costs being revised lower over the next medium-term expenditure period by about 10.6 billion rand. And that really reflecting the fact that we've had such a strong local currency over the past year or so. We've seen significant yield compression in terms of bond yields. We also have lower inflation and lower interest rates. So all of these aiding in bringing debt servicing costs lower. And if we look at the projected growth rate for debt servicing costs, that's sitting at about 3.7% per annum over the next 3 years or so. So it's no longer the fast growing expenditure item in the budget, which is also really a key positive. If we're looking at the debt to GDP trajectory, we did see that peaking in 2025-26, as you said, the first time since 2008. So really a key a point of progress there. It did come in slightly higher than what was initially projected, and that just reflecting some higher borrowing and lower nominal GDP growth last year. But overall, we're expecting to see that debt consolidation pathway continuing to improve over the next couple of years.
Child support grant is up by 20 rands to 580 rands. And some economists have been saying that this does not make sense because they believe that funding businesses and, populating the private sector with funding that could help in terms of, creating jobs so that the government can be able to take taxes from there. Would you say that, are you of the same view that perhaps they should have maybe tried to cut on that and maybe fund the private sector?
Look, because we had that overshoot in revenue, they did have a little bit of wiggle room. So we did see some increases on some of the social development items such as grants. But what is also important to remember is that there definitely was also some mention on improving conditions for businesses. Particularly, we saw a lot of focus on improving conditions for small businesses. So we had the VAT registration level being raised to about 2 million rand, so really supporting small businesses from that perspective as well as some other tax relief measures. So I think it was actually quite balanced. You can't necessarily ignore the social development aspect of that.
Right.
So I think it was quite balanced.
Right. Thank you so much for indeed making the time. Andrew Brinks, investment analyst at Absa Bank. Well, that brings us to the end of today's edition of Africa in Business on Channel Africa. From me, Innocent Simosa, and the entire team, have a productive evening.